In this video, we are going to review another video where Dr. Jordan Peterson mixed up ideas so much, and in the end made it very clear what he was trying to say. So let's begin.
You know, this is something my wife has pointed out too. She said, well, men are going to have to stand up for themselves, but here's the problem. I know how to stand up to a man who's unfairly trespassing against me.
Wait, so he is saying he knows how to stand up for himself against a man who's treating him unfairly. Now, we still have not seen the full video, but it looks like he's talking about standing up in a physical sense. If he is talking about that, then he seriously overestimates himself. I am not supporting any kind of violence here, but any young man who is trespassing Dr. Jordan Peterson would probably eat him alive given the physical shape he is in. So let's move forward.
And the reason I know that is because the parameters for my resistance are quite well defined, which is we talk, we argue, we push, and then it becomes physical.
Not exactly. Given the free speech laws on most Western countries, you cannot get physical with someone even if they are cursing you, let alone getting physical only after an argument.
Right, like if we move beyond the boundaries of civil discourse, we know what the next step is. Okay, that's forbidden in discourse with women.
Yeah, it is forbidden in discourse with men too, according to the law. The only time law allows you to get physical with someone is for the purpose of self-defense or defending someone else. And for your information, this law applies to all members of society, including women.
And so I don't think that men can control crazy women. I really don't believe it. I think that they have to throw their hands up in it's not even disbelief. It's that there's no step forward that you can take under those circumstances.
And here we go. We are getting closer to what he is actually trying to say. First of all, men do not need to or have to control crazy women. The society have to. And there are actually laws that protect people from walking over someone else. And again, all these laws apply to women as well. And talking about the fact that there is no further action men can take, it is wrong. If a woman is actually trespassing you, you can call in the authorities, and then they can decide whether she was a problem or your male ego was the problem.
Because if the man is offensive enough and crazy enough, the reaction becomes physical right away, or at least the threat is there. And when men are talking to each other in any serious manner, that underlying threat of physicality is always there, especially if it's a real conversation, and it keeps the thing civilized to some degree.
And I don't know what kind of society he is talking about here, but in most normal conversations, there is no underlying threat of violence. And what keep the thing civilized is, again, the law. If you think men stay civilized with each other because of threat of violence, then anytime Mr. Olympia and his friend are arguing, it should either end in Mr. Olympia winning the argument or his friend getting the taste of that underlying violence.
You know, if you're talking to a man who wouldn't fight with you under any circumstances whatsoever, then you're talking to someone to whom you have absolutely no respect.
So he is saying that a man who cannot fight physically has no respect among men. I think it's very famously known that people who control mafia are very old and do not have the ability to harm their subordinates physically. But everyone still respects them because of their knowledge and wisdom.
But I can't see any way. For example, there's a woman in Toronto who's been organizing this movement, let's say, against me and some other people who are going to do a free speech event, and she managed to organize quite effectively. And she's quite offensive, you might say. She compared us to Nazis, for example, which, you know, publicly, using the swastika, which wasn't really something I was all that fond of. But I'm defenseless against that kind of female insanity, because the techniques that I would use against a man who was employing those tactics are forbidden to me.
So there are a lot of things to be uncovered here. First of all, his statement suggests that the women who is calling him out do not have the right to free speech. Dr. Jordan Peterson thinks that if someone called him Nazi, he would deal with him physically. But he can call anyone any name and his free speech must not be controlled. He supported his view at Oxford by arguing that no one will be able to define the hate speech justly. Secondly, it suggests that Jordan Peterson thinks that political discourse should not be handled using arguments, but rather using violence. I do not know if this rule would apply to men as well. And lastly, he said a very funny thing here. He said if a man is being offensive to him like this, he would take some further steps. And you know, some people actually did him dirty on Twitter. And you know what further steps he took. He cried about it and left the Twitter.
Techniques that I would use against a man who was employing those tactics are forbidden to me. So I don't know Like, it seems to me that it isn't men that have to stand up and say enough of this, even though that is what they should.
Now we are getting really close to it. He said men should stand up and say enough of this. I actually never understand he act like he is in a movie or something. For his knowledge, there are already laws in place that protect people from getting abused.
It seems to me that it's sane women who have to stand up against their crazy sisters and say, look, enough of that, enough man-hating, enough pathology, enough bringing disgrace on us as a gender. But the problem there, and then I'll stop my little tirade, is that most of the women I know who are sane are busy doing sane things, right? They're off, they have their career, they have their family, they're quite occupied, and they don't seem to have the time or maybe even the interest to go after their crazy harpy sisters. And so
I do not know if he would apply the same rule to incels. If some women are acting crazy, they have to be told enough man-hating. But for incels, who hate women to an extent most women could not even imagine, he turned into an emotional father and tried to give them a voice. Why not get physical with them and tell them, enough of this women hating?
I don't see any regulating force for that terrible femininity. And it seems to me to be invading the culture and undermining the masculine power of the culture in a way that's, I think, fatal.
And now we understand. Even though incels are a bigger danger to society, but they should still be given a voice. You know why? Because they are not a threat to masculine power of the culture. And you know what he do not seem to like here? It is the fact that women are now taking part in society and challenging the masculine norms of society. Anyway, that's all from this video. If you want me to analyze any other video, make sure to leave a comment.